Next on Max TV, we take a look at Latin Fury and review Showbox, and we have news and notes coming up on the next round. And welcome to the next round, brought to you by Everlast. Steve, Kim, Gabe Montoya, talking boxing. We begin round number 1 from the theater at Madison Square Garden, another edition of Latin Fury, brought to you by Top Rank, your main event of the night. For the WBO Junior Featherweight title, Juanma Lopez takes on Rogers Managua. And then the co-feature, featherweight Yuri Gamboa takes on Weiber Garcia. Going back up top, Juanma Lopez, one of the most talented young champions in the sport today. I think Rogers Managua is a tough, solid workhorse, steady old veteran. But I think really, basically, a good, steady, stay-busy fight for Juanma Lopez here.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that's gonna take him rounds. He's gonna be there all throughout the fight. I think that Juanma's style is going to really play into Managua's style, and that he's very aggressive. He comes forward, he throws a lot of punches, and that's exactly what Managua needs him to do. I think the onus is on Juanma to use some angles and to be a little safe with this, because I think down the line we're looking at Gamboa versus Juanma, and hopefully they're trying to preserve this with this kind of matchup. But I wonder with Managua if that fight with Tomas Tia, if that took something out of him, if he's got enough left in him, to make this a real fight. I mean, he's got 276 something rounds in him. He's 30 years old. He's had a lot of wars. And I wonder just how well he's going to be able to stand up to Juanma.
Yeah, Roger Managua is an absolute warhorse, and he's a tough guy. And you talk about that fight with Tomas Villa, one of the great last fights of Telefutura history.
Yeah.
The thing I like about Managua, though, he's a real fighter, and I think this style is much more conducive to having an entertaining fight for Juanma Lopez than Olivier Longte, who absolutely stunk out the joint and really turned Juanma Lopez into a chaser, which is not really his most comfortable role. But I do think this fight is big for Juanma Lopez because January 23rd, the premiere of HBO on 2010, there is going to be a Boxing After Dark, and there's a lot of talk of Juanma Lopez perhaps facing a Celestino Caballero in a unification bout. So there's a lot on the line. But I think Juanma Lopez will win just like he did against Longte. The big difference, I think he'll actually look good in doing so.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting. I mean, Managua, he's always kind of, there. He's got late power. He carries his power late into the fight. But he's got, kind of wide punches. He doesn't really have a lot of great defense. And I think Juanma's straight punches are just going to come right down the middle. The southpaw style is going to be tough for him to handle. But, if Juanma, gets a little tired like he did with Jerry Penalosa, and he can't blast him out early, he's going to have to find, a plan B or a plan C, or he could have some problems late, because against a guy like Managua, he can get stopped late if he's not careful.
Yeah, Managua comes to the dance.
Yeah.
He comes to the dance, and he does not dance. He's a real, true, consummate, professional, rugged fighter. But this is what I do like about Top Rank, and I know the Latin Furies have come under some scrutiny, but when it comes to guys like Juanma Lopez and even Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., I like the fact that Top Rank acts like a promoter and not a booking agent for a network. If I hear one more time from a promoter, well, we got to look for an HBO date or a Showtime date, I have to tell you guys, that's not promoting. That is looking to be a television packager. And the fact that one thing that I like is that Juanma Lopez, if you look at his progression, he has been kept very, very active. There are no 8-9 month hiatuses for this kid. He is actually made to be a regular performer.
That's the smart thing to do. I mean, when you do get those HBO dates, generally you're only going to get like two a year, 3 if you're really lucky. But what Top Rank has done is they've given him his 2 HBO dates, and then they give him 2 other dates, on the Latin Fury cards, and they keep him busy. It builds his fan base, and it keeps him sharp, keeps him close to weight. He's not going to blow up. With fighters, a lot of times, if they're idle, that's like the worst possible thing for him. And they've kept him really, on his game this way. I'm going to take him by probably late stoppage.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. Sharper, faster, quicker, and younger. And boxing, at its heart, is a young man's game. Also on this card, Yuri Gamboa takes on Weiber Garcia for one of the interim titles of the WBA. Yuri Gamboa, loads of talent, and this is his long-awaited top-ranked debut. He had visa problems, which I find amazing. You have a guy by the name of Gamboa having visa problems and can't fight in Mexico. That's something I haven't quite figured out yet. But Yuri Gamboa is a guy, a lot of hype. I think they could move him fast. But I just wonder, is the hype as good as the actual production?
That's definitely the question for me. I mean, I haven't really seen him step up in competition very much. I mean, the times he has, it's against a guy that isn't very dangerous but has a good chin and is rugged, so he'll take him the distance. With Gamboa, it's kind of hot and cold to me. I think there's still a lot of flaws there. He still squares up. He still gets really excited if he even thinks that he's hurt his opponent and leaves his chin, way high up there as he lets his punches go. But, against Garcia, he's got a guy that's going to be there to be hit. Granted, he's a little taller. He's kind of rangy at 5'7" to Gamboa's 5'5", but he has a tendency to push his punches, and particularly with the right hand, he kind of reaches and leaves his chin right out there to be countered. So, particularly for the left hook or the uppercut. So
Yuri Gamboa, like you talked about the physical tools, speed, power, technique, good amateur background, puts it all together, but you're right. There's an old saying from John Wooden, be quick but don't be in a hurry. Every once in a while he's in a hurry, and I do think he has a fatal flaw physically. It's not exactly George Chuvalo or Scrap Iron Johnson. I saw him against Marcos Ramirez, a hand-picked guy to Kansas on Boxing After Dark last year. A fight that he really should not have had a lot of problems with.
Not at all.
He hit the deck, and it's not the first time that he's hit the deck against Speedy Gonzalez, a guy that works out at Wild Card. He's not known as a puncher. He had him on the deck. So the thing I like about Yuri Gamboa, though, for as gifted as he is, he's flawed. And when you're a flawed fighter with gifts, you know what that means? It means you're going to be a fun fighter.
Yeah, that's true. And to his credit, though, he has hit the deck, but he always gets up to win, usually to stop the opponent. And he never really seems hurt. It's almost like Trinidad. He'd get dropped, and then, okay, now I'm awake, now I'm in the fight. And he turns it on. But I think maybe those little blips or little bumps in the road are going to get him to stay on his game, to keep that chin tucked, and to stay a little more technical. I mean, I think for him, because he's so fast and athletic, the onus is just to go out there and blow your guy out, as opposed to kind of setting it up and getting the knockout the right way.
But there are guys, though, Gabe, and I've seen this a lot, guys who look spectacular against overmatched guys early on in their career, 10, 15 fights in, and then like a Zab Judah, as guys get a little bit steadier, more solid, and they're more professional, the flash and dash, all of a sudden, you find out that there's a lot of sizzle and there's not a lot of steak. We're going to see just how much meat there is on the bone of Yuri Gamboa coming into the near future, because I do think that Bob Arum's long-term plan one day, maybe next year, is to match Juanma Lopez against Yuri Gamboa, and I think that's a very, very intriguing matchup of a flashy, fast, slick guy against a guy that's very steady and technically sound in Juanma Lopez.
Yeah, that's an exciting matchup. It's got everything that you could possibly want. But it is exciting to kind of have Gamboa now with Top Rank, because if anybody knows how to develop young talent or even reclaim young talent, it's Top Rank. And you can kind of see it in this matchup that they're putting him in with a guy that isn't the biggest puncher in the world, but he does present problems in being kind of a taller, rangier guy like Juanma is going to be for him. And it kind of helps him. You can do those, like you said, flash and dash kind of fights, but then you jump to the top level competition, you're going to get blown out. There's a wide chasm in there that needs to be crossed before you can get to that place. And Gamboa hasn't done it yet, so now we're going to start to see that, I think.
Well, Gabe, we found out that a guy like Gamboa, he can sprint. He's Usain Bolt. We're going to see if he's Kenyan, if he can start to run marathons in long distances. Well, that's it for Latin Fury. We come back. Round number 2, we take a look at Showbox. And we are back on the next round, brought to you by Everlast, Gabriel Montoya, Steve Kim, talking boxing. Round number 2, it's another edition of Showbox, your main event super middleweight, Alan Green with a 10-round decision over Tarvis Sims. Welterweight prospect Antoine Smith continues his impressive run, walking down Henry Crawford in 9 rounds. And super middleweight prospect Marcus Johnson, he goes to 18-0 with an 8-round decision over Victor Villarreal. Let's go back up top. The thing about Alan Green, I've called him Dow Jones because he is up and down. This is definitely a down spot, and this is a night, speaking on the financial level, he was Alan Greenspan. He was boring. I'm sorry. If you're going to make us think about, I need to be in the Super 6, I'm one of the best exciting fighters in the world, well, you know what? Start to show me. Start to do Missouri, because right now there's a lot of talk, but there's not enough walk from Alan Green.
Yeah, I mean, granted, Sims is not exactly a walk in the park. He's a crafty guy. He was switching southpaw and back and forth all throughout the fight. He's got some solid defense. But, he was on 6 days' notice. That's the kind of opponent that you should be able to kind of push the pace with. His conditioning isn't going to quite be there. And you should be making a statement at this point. We're 2 weeks out from the Super 6. You're kind of making your case to be an alternate, or to at least say, rightfully that you belonged in this. But, to say that I only trained for a come-forward fighter, and I don't know how to deal with Tarvis Sims, who's not Floyd Mayweather, he's not Sweep.
He's also a junior middleweight.
Yeah.
He's also more of a junior middleweight middleweight. And there's a couple of things. I've called him Mariano Rivera because he's warming up in the bullpen. After seeing that performance, if I'm the manager and I'm Ken Hirschman, I call the phone up in the bullpen. I'd say, you know what, sit him down, get the left-hander ready. Because I don't think Alan Green made a statement except to say, we really don't give a damn if he's in the Super 6 or not. And you can say what you want about Jermaine Taylor. Yes, Jermaine Taylor is on the decline. One thing Jermaine Taylor has provided is good fights and a little bit of drama, something sorely lacking in the resume of Alan Green, and he's battle-tested at the world-class level.
Absolutely, and you know, to me, the statement is, well, I don't really know how to deal with styles when they're thrown at me, and if there's one thing you need to have is in the Super 6 is to be able to deal with any kind of style that's going to be thrown at you, because there's a plethora of different type of fighters in that tournament, and to sit there and say, you know, I've got this smaller guy, but man, I really wasn't quite ready for him. Well, you know what? He wasn't really ready for you either, and he took you the distance. So, you know, I don't really want to hear any more talking about how you're this or you're that or how people don't give you this. Show me something, and then we'll talk.
Yes, a man that stole the show, and talk about a guy that talked the talk and walked the walk is Antoine Smith. Yeah. Another impressive victory. I thought Henry Crawford looked very good the first couple of rounds. Fast, sharp, good jab, good hand speed, an undefeated guy that never really knew how to lose. He was taught to lose this night because he was absolutely walked down. And the thing I like about Antoine Smith, he's not a guy that's just going to be content to stink out the joint and say, I'm undefeated. This guy is an exciting, television-friendly fighter. When Antoine Smith fights, I want to be there.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, you just see him. He just had to have it that night, you know? He wasn't going to be denied. He kind of reminds me of Glenn Johnson in a way.
That's what I wrote. I agree.
Yeah, he's a, you know, kind of shell defense. He's got a little more flash and a little more athleticism.
More hand speed.
Yeah, than Glenn Johnson. But he keeps coming forward. He's kind of workmanlike. He took those first 2 rounds to kind of adjust and also to kind of warm up and warm into the fight. But that chopping right and the, you know, the left of the body, he just slowly broke down, Crawford. But it was interesting with Crawford, when he was on offense, he looked great. You know, he's flashy, good hand speed, solid punches. But the defense was terrible. And as he got tired, it became more porous than a sponge. You know, it got wider and wider. He didn't know how to pick off punches. He didn't really know what to do when he was going on the back foot.
Gabe, you know what they say about pressure? It busts pipes.
Yeah.
And it absolutely busted Henry Crawford, who I don't think had ever been under that type of duress throughout his professional career this far in. And the thing about Antoine Smith, and people ask me, who does he remind you of? I've heard James Toney, I've heard a couple, but I like the Glenn Johnson comparison. I actually made that myself. And the difference is he's a little bit faster than Glenn Johnson, and he's more athletic. So he's definitely an athletic grinder. He is going to be a handful for anyone to face in the future. Yeah. And I really believe that Lou DiBella, who just recently signed him, he's going to have a tough time getting this kid fights at the 10-round level, because I think the secret is out. When you deal with Antoine Smith, you really are dealing with a young, world-class guy who's going to be an MF-er to deal with in the future. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if Shane Mosley has trouble getting fights, you know, and he's a guy that actually brings money to the table, look at a guy like this and like, you know, maybe he's going to be like the welterweight, you know, Glenn Johnson. Nobody's going to want to deal with him. You're going to put him out on the road and see what he does. I think he's exciting to watch. You know, we talked last week maybe about Mike Jones fighting him.
I wouldn't make that fight on either end, though. I think it's too soon. Yeah. From a money perspective, if you're Mike Jones and Russell Peltz, you look at that fight, if you're not going to get a couple $100,000 for it, and it may or may not be on HBO Boxing After Dark,
right?
For the risk versus reward pendulum on either side, don't you make that fight maybe 18 months down the line when it really means something for a title or two at stake?
Yeah, at least for like a title eliminator or something like that. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, those are 2 guys that are blue chip prospects. You don't really want to waste them, but what a hell of a fight that would be. Though.
Absolutely. And Marcus Johnson, I think, has a good overall skill set. I want to see him against a better level and grade of opposition. I think he's one of these guys, as you up the competition and guys are a little bit more competent. Villarreal was a tough, steady journeyman. Yeah. But I want to see him against a guy that offensively is going to provide a threat. But I do like Marcus Johnson. He wasn't spectacular, but I think he showed a very good skill set.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he's not a bad fighter at all. You know, I think it was one of those cases of the silent contract after a while, where, you know, Villarreal just kind of lost his aggression throughout the fight. And, you know, and Johnson kind of, you know, said, okay, you know, I won't knock you out, but I'm going to keep coming forward. But, yeah, I agree with you. You know, you put him in with a threat, and we're going to see whether or not he's special or not.
Well, he's 18-0, 14 knockouts. And another thing that I think is a factor with any young fighter, he was put on the deep freeze by Don King, which happens a lot. Don is great at the higher ends when you're making millions of dollars and you want to fight once or twice a year. Young fledgling guy like Marcus Johnson, who has not fought in a while, I think that increased activity under the DBE banner will also serve him well. Yeah. Well, that's it for Showbox, that report, round number 2. We come back, we wrap it up with news and notes on the next round. And we wrap things up here on the next round, brought to you by Everlast. We go to news and notes. We go to the fight review. There's one fight of note from New Zealand. David Tua blows out Shane Cameron in 2. The Tua man is back. Or is he? Here's the thing. I've said this even before you came aboard here. I wouldn't count any heavyweight out that has a pedigree and a punch. That's two things that David Tua has. Now, if he is motivated, again, which is a thing that's been a question mark, I think in this current landscape, he is a threat. Because let's face it, to quote Rick Pitino, to paraphrase him, Ernie Shavers is not walking through that door. Ron Lyle ain't walking through that door. The question is David Tua walking through that door?
I think he's got a little run in him, man. Granted, Cameron was not, a world beater by any means. But, Tua imposed his will. What I liked was that he was kind of patient early on, kind of waited for his spot. But when he had his spot, he exploded, and he let his hands go, and the fight was pretty much over. I mean, they didn't really need to even do that second round. But here's the thing that I thought on the negative side was that, okay, when he was plodding around and kind of letting Cameron dictate things a little bit, what would happen if he was facing a Klitschko or even a Kevin Johnson who has a really solid jab? Would he be turned into the David Tua that fought Lennox Lewis and just kind of beaten down into complacency, or would he
Certain
explode?
styles are going to give him problems. Listen, the book is out on David Tua. He's kind of like the heavyweight version of Rocky Juarez before there was a Rocky Juarez. Tall, upright guys who from the outside could square him off with the jab and slow the tempo and get him into a monotonous mode. They're absolutely going to give him problems, but also at the same time, David Tua is a puncher. If you put him in with certain styles, he will look good, and there's got to be a sense of urgency or desperation. The guy's 38, 39 years old. I don't know what his financial situation is, but I'm figuring he's boxing for a reason. He might have one more run, but again, motivation will be the key for David Tua. Taking a look at the fight preview from Japan for the WBA junior lightweight title, Jorge Linares takes on Juan Carlos Salgado. And then from Los Angeles, it's the return of Israel Vasquez, who takes on Angel Priolo. We've talked about this before. Jorge Linares is one of the best-kept secrets in boxing. He just signed a deal with Golden Boy Promotions. Let's hope after this soiree here in Japan, he starts to be brought out like Neil Diamond. He's coming to America. Yeah,
I'm excited, man. Hopefully, he gets through this fight okay. He's fighting a guy that's undefeated. He's, 20-0-1. But the record is a little bit of a homegrown variety. He doesn't look like he's, the biggest puncher in the world. He's fought guys with not the greatest records and not the most winning records on the planet. But, Linares is as exciting as they come. He's a guy that we've talked about a lot, that we think is, a future pound-for-pound entrant if you're into that sort of thing. I'm not. But, hopefully we can get him here to America and kind of make up for lost time, because he seems like he's been sitting on the shelf forever.
Well, let's be honest about J.C. Salgado. His opposition's been soft. It's a built-up record, and going by class, Jorge Linares should look good. This is a pretty good style for him. The thing about Linares, he can be exciting, but he's also had some fights where for long stretches you could say there's a lot of rust. There's been some injury problems. Activity has been a problem. But I'm going to say this again, folks. He's won a title at 26. I think he's won a title at 30. I think this guy can go up at least a couple more weight divisions and really be a factor from 35, 40, maybe even 47. I'd like to see him come to America and to take on some of the big names between 30 and 35.
And the thing about him is that, he's technically skilled, he's got speed, he's got power, but he's also got that fighter's mentality. He likes to come forward, he likes to finish off opponents. He's an exciting guy. He's got all the intangibles. So, yeah, I just can't wait.
And Israel Vasquez is back, and I actually saw an x-ray of his eye. And it was interesting. They actually had duct tape and super glue show up. I mean, that eye is really a thing that's almost like that, those novelty glasses with the slinky eye. They are basically being very, very careful here, as they should, with Angel Priolo, who's been knocked out, I believe, at 112 pounds by Brian Valoria. But you know what? You could rip the matchup all you want. From a managerial perspective, this is what you should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's been knocked out by the best. Modest, Jorge Arce's got him, Brian Valoria's got him. And, streaks go, he's on a 7-fight losing streak. He's been knocked out 6 of those times and, gone the distance 1 of those times. So this is exactly the perfect guy to come back against. Maybe they can preserve that Rafael Marquez, the 4th fight, and not, put Vasquez in too dangerous. He's also been off for a while, and any fighter that has, it's going to have some rust, particularly with his type of style.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. The goal here of Golden Boy Promotions, Espinoza Promotions, and Frank Espinoza is they know they don't have a 2-3 year window. They're going to try to get through this fight and build towards a 4th Marquez fight, which I think on both perspectives is the right fight to make. You don't want to screw around with Celestino Caballero or guys like Juanma Lopez. I think once they get to that fight, that is the payoff and the victory for each side. Taking a look as we wrap it up here, some tidbits. J.C. Chavez Jr. has been added to the Pacquiao-Cotto undercard. He'll face Troy Rowland on November 14th. Yes, my tone says it all. And then Juan Diaz-Palanagi, the rematch. Yes, there is life. It could happen on December 12th. More on that story. Well, but first, Bob Arum. I respect Bob Arum. We gave him a lot of praise early in the show. But he has completely overpromised, underdelivered. And I'm going to do a Bob Arum now. For all you schmucks out there, you're going to have to face it. This is the undercard. I delivered. But I got to tell you, it's awful. It's just, really, I could understand you could put on Gomez Soto Cross is an outstanding action fight.
Yeah.
But when you're promising us, or at least fishing out there, Humberto Soto against the Peterson brother or against Ramon Acosta, and now we get Chavez against Troy Rowland. Wow, you know what? You're right. They haven't run out of white guys.
Yeah, just when you thought it was safe to be a feather-fisted white guy from the Midwest.
It's not.
Yeah, Troy Rowland's phone rang. It's like they jumped the shark, but then they didn't hit the other ramp and landed in the water.
Jump the shark? This is Jaws 1, 2, and 3. This is Moby Dick that they jumped over. This is the Titanic's iceberg that they jumped over. This is Bob Beamon in '68 in Mexico. I have to tell you.
Some of those things are actually fun to watch, though.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Chavez Jr., has this become full-blown Mexican butterbean?
Yeah, it kind of has. They might as well just make it a 4-rounder, it's just...
I don't think there's a need to schedule it for 4 rounds.
No, it's... call me when I'm supposed to care. That's basically it. Bob had told us that by the end of 2009, we would know if Chavez Jr. is a fighter or not. We would know what we have, in front of us. And I think we know at this point where he's just going to face nothing but stiffs, maybe till his 60th fight, and then maybe he'll be ready, or maybe he'll care enough to train hard enough to be ready for the elite level. I highly doubt it.
Gabe, it looks like Diaz-Palanagi, too, has some life. And a related story to this, Robert Guerrero was supposed to headline this, but there's a big battle. And you want to talk about the fight of Guerrero's life, is that Goosen Tudor and Dan Goosen is saying, woohoo, we got the appeal in the court, you're back with us. And then Robert Guerrero and Golden Boy saying, no, we're not going anywhere, we don't want to be with you. Expect a long legal battle. What I found interesting, just going to that real quickly, is that the judge who overturned the appeal of the California State Athletic Commission basically said there was clear fraud and corruption in that ruling. So I think this thing is deeper than Robert Guerrero.
Yeah, this is going to get ugly. I think that, the commission's going to get exposed. One of the promoters, whoever they think has been tampering, is going to get exposed. But to keep it really simple, because I'm kind of a simple guy. Robert Guerrero doesn't want to be with Goosen Tudor anymore. And at some point, you've got a contract and you've invested money in him, but why would you want to have a fighter fight for you that doesn't want to?
Yeah, what was that song in the late mid-'80s? Free, set them free. Yeah. If you love someone. I forgot who that was, but that's kind of, I think your Sting. I think the bottom line is what's going to happen is that I think there's going to be a lawsuit against certain individuals who I believe that Goosen believes made this happen, tortuously interfere with that contract. And I think people know who I'm talking about. I don't want to get into it now. I also believe that Golden Boy, if they write a check with enough zeros on the right side of the ledger, they will walk away and let the ghost do whatever he wants to do. Now, going back to this, Diaz-Palanagi, too, I'm being told this fight is pretty close to being done. HBO really has no options now, or Golden Boy, for Boxing After Dark. And of all places, this fight may end up in Chicago. I guess that's neutral ground. There's enough Mexicans and enough Italians. I guess this is known as neutral ground in boxing.
Yeah, but are there enough people that care? That's what I wonder. The first fight was controversial because of one score, but it wasn't the most exciting fight on the planet. Diaz, couldn't quite, get close enough to do anything of note, and Palanagi didn't stand still long enough to do anything of note, other than kind of jab, and throw some flash. I'm not that excited to see it. I'm, happy that Paulie, gets his moment in the sun again to kind of clear up that wide score, which I totally disagreed with, but that's about it.
The thing is, I still believe from a promotional standpoint in terms of the live gate, this fight still believes in Texas. My thing would have been, if I'm Lou DiBella, let's have it in Texas, try to get the biggest audience possible, bring in 3 neutral, out-of-state judges.
Yeah, how hard is that? I don't know.
I really don't. It doesn't seem to make sense, and I agree with you. This fight was notable. It had some moments. There was controversy. But let's be very honest. This was not even one of the top 10 fights of 2009.
Not even top 15. Not even top 20.
Yeah, but it looks like we are going to see it December 12th. Well, that's it for this week's edition of TNR. On behalf of Gabriel Montoya and the rest of Max Boxing, till the next round, goodbye, everybody.